Okay, everybody comfortable? Cell phones off, right? Okay, here we go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of All Things Considered.
The podcast where we ask you to consider all things as opposed to picking out a single classic for your consideration. I'm your host, Dustin Friesenheim.
And I'm Mike Josick. And a hearty hello to everybody who's catching the show on YouTube, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and all other great podcast providers. And if you catch the show on iTunes, we would encourage you, while you're there, to rate and review the show because it's good for us, which is good for you.
It's just plain old good.
If you're a regular listener of the show, welcome back. And if this is your first time catching us, be warned, spoilers ahead.
Spoilers afoot. That would have worked well with Sherlock Holmes.
It would have. And it's Billy Wilder's birthday today. He did the Sherlock Holmes movie.
It is too late for all that.
So we're back with another All Things Considered, the first part of our kind of 2-week All Things Considered week, as it were. Also the first All Things Considered we haven't done a format change.
In a little bit.
By the next time we've had an episode come around. So yeah, All Things Considered is our monthly kind of open review show where we tend to do films that are either in theatrical release. In the case of the movie we're doing this week, hasn't had a theatrical release in North America, but we just kind of want to bring attention to. And then of course, we follow up the regular Monday episode with a Thursday episode, which is kind of a secondary double feature review show where Dustin and I recommend a film to each other, and then we kind of go over it. And it just gives us an opportunity to talk about things we don't usually get the opportunity to talk about on the regular For Your Consideration program.
And scene.
So this week on the show, we're going to be talking about the 2017 Japanese samurai manga adaptation by Takashi Miike, Blade of the Immortal.
A.k.a. Blade of the I guess he hasn't quite died yet, so we're going to call that close enough. I mean, you do have a way to kill him in the film, so he's not... So, is that technically immortal?
I think you're immortal if you live forever, barring any unforeseen circumstances. I don't think it means that you're unkillable.
I feel that applies to humans as well. We're all immortal until we die.
But he will continue living forever unless someone ends that. He doesn't have the natural decay of his cells because the bloodworms are keeping him going.
But what is true death? The death of the self? Is it the death of the body?
But just before we
We're
get into
call it good enough.
Just before we get into the discussion of the film, we wanted to cover something that is in reference to something we brought up in our Private Life of Sherlock Holmes episode, which was at the time our 100th release episode of the show, and we ran a contest, which no one responded to. I'm not sure if that's just because maybe the Private Life of Sherlock Holmes wasn't a film that drew a lot of attention from people, or maybe people didn't listen right to the end. I'm not sure, but I thought I would put it to Dustin, since the contest is officially over, because it only ran for like a couple of weeks, do we want to give it an extension? Do we want to give people another chance to celebrate, what do you call it when it's late?
Belated celebration.
Do we want to give people a chance to belatedly celebrate our 100th release episode with our giveaway contest? Or do we want to just call it quits? And
I say we open it up to the world at large, tweet it, post it somewhere on Facebook, whatever. Do the same thing, give people another week, see if that works. As opposed to nesting it somewhere in an episode where people might be skipping it.
1 week? All right. So the contest is officially back on, and just to let you guys know what it is, to celebrate our 100th release episode, we were going to do a giveaway. We are doing a giveaway where we want you to pick your favorite episode of the show, of the last 100 plus episodes now, and basically share it on your Twitter, and when you share it, hashtag it with FYC100. After a week, we will go and select one lucky winner, and we will send you a DVD or Blu-ray of a film of your choice. Could be one of the films that we've covered, could be just something you've always wanted to add to your collection.
And if it's a film that we haven't done, we will do a review of it. We will hit it with the FYC method.
We're going to break it down.
We're going to do what we do for that film.
We will analyze the shit out of it. And we'll also mention it on the Thursday All Things Considered episode, just to kind of reiterate, and I'll probably do some posts on social media just to get out there. So share your favorite FYC episode, All Things Considered episode, in case you were considering episode, sound considerations, audio commentaries, whatever. If we've put it up,
if you lie, we won't know.
And just hashtag it with FYC100, and we'll pick a winner by next Monday's episode, which we will tell you what that is probably at the end of this episode. Also, I just want to remind people of two things. One, I have apparently been incorrectly stating the WordPress address for the blog for several months. It is not wordpress.com/FYC show. It is fycshow.wordpress.com. So if you've been looking for the blog and you haven't managed to find the blog, that's
I'm surprised, really.
Yes. You probably haven't been looking for it, but we've made it more difficult for you by doing that. And the other thing is, we've been doing a thing where when we talk about a movie, we give our judgment, we vote masterpiece, museum piece, but we've also been posting on Twitter and on Facebook for you guys to go and react with whether you think it's a museum piece or a masterpiece. On Facebook, you just have to like for museum piece, love for masterpiece when I post it, and on Twitter, I believe it is retweet for masterpiece and like for museum piece. So after the show, continue the fun, let us know what you think, and with that, I think...
How did American Graffiti do then, if we did that?
Just no response.
No response?
Yeah.
No response.
It kind of died off because I think we stopped mentioning it in the below-the-line stuff before we talk about the movie. So, yeah, I think with Irreversible, it just sort of slid away. Anyways, with that, let us get to the discussion of Takashi Miike's Blade of the Immortal. And here, dear listener, is where I have to interrupt to make a brief editorial amendment. I realized after the recording that throughout the entirety of our discussion of Takashi Miike's Blade of the Immortal, we refer to the antagonist of the film repeatedly as Asano. I think one of us, probably me, said it very early on and it just kind of caught on. We do know Asano is actually Rin's last name, and the antagonist of the film, played by Sota Fukushi, is Kagehisa Anotsu. So, without going back and re-recording the whole thing or doing something really awkward and editing in the correct name, please just every time you hear Asano, just edit it in your head so that it sounds like Anotsu. We'd be eternally grateful. So with that, I'll let you guys get back to our regularly scheduled program. Enjoy. With that, let's get to rolling the credits on Takashi Miike's Blade of the Immortal. The film was directed by Takashi Miike, produced by Jeremy Thomas, Misako Saka, and Shigeji Maeda. The screenplay was by Tetsuya Oishi. It was based on Blade of the Immortal by Hiroaki Samura. It starred Takuya Kimura. Music was by Koji Endo. Cinematography was by Nobuyasu Kita. It was edited by Kenji Yamashita. It was distributed by Warner Brothers Pictures in Japan and released on the 29th of April 2017. The film generally has been received well by critics, although it did not do very well at the box office. It was released festival screening at Cannes in 2017. It got a full theatrical release in Japan. It's believed that the box office results may have something to do with the fact that the lead actor, Takuya Kimura, was part of a popular boy band in Japan. I think they're called SMAP, and they disbanded. And I think there might have been like weird feelings or something, or I don't know.
I've heard some funky things about how boy bands are treated in Japan. Read an article.
I'm actually really curious.
I don't want to say anything that's not necessarily quite true, but I'll mention the article off the air.
All right. So moving on to the discussion, Dustin, what did you think of Blade of the Immortal?
Going into it, I had pretty much the previews that I saw once or twice. I know a couple people at work who thought that it might be interesting to see. And yeah, I'll take Immortal Zombies and something that's sort of like Ninja Scroll that I remember from back in the day, just random going around slicing each other up.
Did you read the manga?
I did not read this manga, no. So I had no real idea what to expect. And one of the things that I really actually enjoyed about it was shooting straight to the end. Nothing he did was really of any consequence. At the end of the day...
Other than basically keeping Rin alive.
Pretty much. Like, it's a small story. The overarching villain would have been taken out anyway. Everything mostly would have happened the way it would have nonetheless, just that he had his own little side story going on during all these events. And I love when scale is like that, where they don't make it where this one person is the crux of everything, regardless of whatever abilities or powers or skills he has.
Kind of like Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I haven't seen that in over a decade.
If you basically take Indiana Jones out of the picture, most of the events will still happen as they would have normally happened. The Nazis would have found the Ark, they would have opened it, they all would have melted and died. The end. But it would have been far less interesting a film and journey.
Now I actually kind of want to see that movie.
Well, it's on the list.
I meant that movie where Indiana Jones is not involved and they just get it and open it up 5 minutes later, okay, we're done. But then who finds the Ark next?
That's the sequel.
Dun, dun, dun.
Brendan Fraser?
Let us not do that.
Lara Croft? Maybe a team of the Mummy guy? Anyways, back to
back to
Samurats.
the story. I was expecting actually a whole lot more unnecessary swordplay in this film. And while there was a lot, it wasn't sort of the Ninja Scroll-esque ramping up of here's a list of generals you got to take out sort of deal that I was sort of expecting. It was more so the story of the woman he's trying to protect, eventually trying to protect, because at first he didn't give a shit.
Yeah, he only joins in after he encounters that one weird guy who's got like her mother's head on his shoulder.
And really, he's the only guy who's got weird powers other than him and another couple of mortals. Because he's talking about how I've trained my entire life to dislocate my shoulders and fight with my arms behind my back sort of deal. After him, I was expecting just a bunch of other weirdos to come up with weird abilities for no good reason.
There were some dudes, but he was kind of the most mystical, I think, out of all of the opponents that he faces from the Ito Ryu, I believe it's called.
Ito Ryu?
Which is essentially, it's a non-traditional fencing school, ultimately. It's a school that has no style. Maybe we should do a quick breakdown of the plot of the movie.
Effectively, what you've got is the Itoryu are very much against the formal structure that they have in a lot of these martial arts schools.
And the reason for that is the leader, Asano, his father was killed for fighting very successfully with like an axe or something, or he got banished. And so he ends up forming this school, which is anti-style, anti-formalism. And they're moving around trying to take out the formal schools that all adhere to a particular style because
they're tired of this elitist BS.
Yeah.
Effectively. Which is very much in line with how a lot of Japanese culture at the time would have been working.
And one of the schools that they take out is run by Rin's father.
And they kill him. The rest of the guys who are with him are like, what should we do with these other two? And he's like, do whatever you want. Whatever. But don't harm the girl, it's not sporting. So, total dick move, and needless to say, she goes on a little vengeance spree, training herself so that she can take them out later on in life. Fairly classic revenge story kind of thing.
And then she runs into Manji, who has basically gone into exile because he had a corrupt boss, and he killed his boss and his guards. And one of his guards was his sister Machi's husband, and she goes a little wonky, and there's a warrant out for him. He's on wanted posters, and there's a reward, and some mercenaries find him. They kill the sister.
He kills a lot of them.
In a fantastic fight scene. And it's right at the front of the film, which actually we're going to talk about in a bit because there have been some complaints about the pacing of this film, and it is a long film. Anyways, just to finish fleshing out the sort of story, his sister dies, he kills everybody.
He gets the immortality.
He gets the bloodworms. Then Rin finds him. She reminds him of his sister. So like 50 years after Manji becomes immortal, he runs into Rin, and Rin wants to hire him. Which brings us back to the weird dude with the shoulders and the mother on the head, and they become a pair, and he decides to train her and be her assassin, ultimately, to take out Asano.
He's never really fully into the job itself. He's just like, well, I'm just going to protect her. Whatever else happens sort of happens. He hits that malaise that I do like seeing in Immortals, because it's like the one thing...
Sooner or later, you're going to get bored.
Sooner or later, you're going to get bored. Sooner or later, you're going to see everybody you love disappear and die, and you're going to wonder what the hell's the point of even being alive. Unless you're just super narcissistic, I suppose. Which he is not. But what I find interesting about the film is all the other stuff you have going on. You have a group of people trying to hunt down the Itoryu, and they do so in super sketchy ways, so they end up on his bad side.
Oh, you're talking about that like little band of...
Yeah, that
led by the other immortal guy.
Was it another immortal guy?
Yeah, with like the really weird low voice. He's pretending to be like the priest that he meets on the road, and then they get into a fight.
I thought he was working for Asano.
No, they're part of the group that is... Or wait a minute.
Yeah, he was working for Asano, but didn't feel that he could take him out alone, so he wanted to hire him and sort of both go after him at once.
No, Asano is the leader of...
Yeah, he wanted to go after Asano. He was working for him. He was an immortal, yes, working under Asano.
Wait, so he was separate from the other group? I thought he was with the other group.
The other group was mercenaries just trying to take out that group. You got a number of groups here. And, yeah, you've got the sort of undercover monk Immortal who's going after Asano because he doesn't believe in what he's doing. He wants to hire our hero in order to help take out this guy who's going around killing a bunch of people. And he offers sort of a, there's also a way for us to die. Here's a poison that takes out the bloodworms, which is an important thing. Then you've got a mercenary group that's just trying to cash in on the bounty that's out on the Itoryu. And one of those guys, well, they're killing people in order to find this information as well. So they end up being super sketchy and they get taken out.
Originally, Manji agrees to work with them, but then he finds out that they're just fucking maniacs too.
Oh yeah. Hell, the one maniac gets his arm chopped off and ends up coming back later on, only to get his arse handed to him again, which he totally deserved, as he was, well, they kill off the one person that they had as sort of a decoy for no good reason. He decides that he's gonna rape Rin. Just people being assholes, basically.
Their informant, they had an informant. Basically, this whole thing was staged in order to out the mercenary group that was trying to get the Itoryu. Their informant within the Itoryu relays the information that he's going to be traveling in this disguise. And when they attack, it's a decoy, which outs the mole, and it also potentially... could take out the people who are trying to take them out. And after it all fails, yeah, like, shitty dude who runs this mercenary group decides...
Let's murder some innocents and rape our partner for no good reason.
Which brings him into conflict with Manji, which creates...
more strife. At the end of the day, the Itoryu, what he's trying to do is legitimize himself as well, sort of, to make the name of his dad mean something, and he has some dealings with the shogunate, but ends up getting betrayed, and he would have been taken out regardless of what Manji does, but that's not what the whole point of the story is. The whole point of the story is Rin trying to move on with her life and sort of deal with what's going on.
Well, it's also Manji learning to live again, because he's immortal and he hasn't lived in the 50 years that he's been alive.
He's just been fishing, living in a tent down by the river.
Because he feels guilty and shitty. And, it's tale as old as time. But it's really well done. And this is a really great segue to come into the pacing of it, because some people have criticized the pacing of this movie, saying that it's too drawn out and it's got too many, dead spots instead of crazy samurai action. They've compared it to 13 Assassins, which has a much more aggressive sort of thrust to the storytelling. I really liked the way this movie played out. It's basically adapting the first two, I think it's two, maybe three volumes of the manga. And there's a lot of information here. There's a lot of characters. And, right off the bat, you've got that insane fight scene. And then there's a lot of talking and just development. And then there's another fight scene here, and there's another fight scene there.
But the fight scenes aren't what the film is about. If it was about fight scenes, if it was an action film, then sure. But it's about finding meaning when you've lost everything. Manji lost his family, lost everything that was going on in his life, and is living in a tent down by the river. Rin lost her family, lost everything that's going on for her, and so they've got to find sort of a meaning for themselves. You've got Asano who lost his dad and is trying to regain honor. Everyone's just trying to find a purpose for themselves. And yeah, it often has these fights going on, but that's just sort of the backdrop. It's stuff that happens to happen in these people's lives, but it's not the crux of the film.
And the fights build character.
His fight with Asano's sort of bodyguard lady. Maki. She's definitely important when it comes to everyone's character growth.
Yeah, and she comes back later in the film.
The only people who have no character are the shogunate.
They are actually hard to distinguish from one another, because you get names, but they're all sort of dressed the same. They're all dressed very blandly.
None really have any personality.
It's the side characters who have interesting costumes and interesting hairdos. And it's very, if this was an American movie, these would be like corporate dudes, white men in black suits, screwing everybody over. Red ties.
Or black ties. Let's go Agent Smith.
But that's also something that I thought was really interesting about the film, because other than that moment where he basically permits such a brutal violation of Rin's mother, I do empathize with Asano. And by the end of the film, when he's fighting Manji, there's tragedy there. There's pathos there. There's, you know that he's the bad guy, and like, Rin has to face up to the choice of whether, is this someone that she's going to take revenge over when she finally, hears sort of what his story is and what will her revenge accomplish. And there's that insane fight at the end with everybody, like literally everybody in the film comes back into play for this gigantic, amazingly choreographed battle where the government is there, Maki is there, or Asano's there, Itoryu is there.
What's left of it anyway.
Yeah.
The
Manji,
mercenary.
Rin. So by that point, I'm looking at Asano's character, and even though he's done horrible things, you know why he's done these horrible things. And while you may not agree with how he's gone about it, he does have a genuine beef.
But the why, killing the leaders of these dojos, fine. Like, that is something that is a bit more reasonable to your beef, because that's sort of what led to your father's death. There's no reason to abuse the wives, even if you're the nice guy who says, hey, don't torture and murder the child. You're still unnecessarily raping people. It's just, fuck you, to an extent. I don't care.
That was kind of the order of the day back then, though, wasn't it? I mean...
That's just how they did things back then. Regardless, you still get to be a dick. I don't care. Back in early American days, it was the thing you did where you sometimes would just, hobble your slaves. If you're a character in a movie who hobbles your slave, you're a dick. I don't care what the era of the film was. I will always hold ethics to the standard that everybody deserves respect.
I'm just saying it's historically accurate, narratively. Anyways,
as much as true.
It's a 2.5 hour movie, and I was not bored during any of this movie. I really enjoyed the performances. I really enjoyed the characters. I enjoyed their journey. I enjoyed the action sequences. There's a lot going on here. There's a lot to sink your teeth into, and these characters are rich. Did you have any problem with the pacing?
I didn't think there was a problem with the pacing until you said other people had a problem with it. I didn't feel it was dragging out in any place. There was enough battles that, battles were certainly happening. But as I said, that's not what I felt the film was about, so I didn't feel like there needed to be more. And that seems to be the contention people have when it comes to films like this. They're just looking for something different. Or they were looking for something that was the same but got something different. Probably just they hear Miike and they're like, okay, it's going to be another unnecessary bloodbath.
That was another thing that I thought was interesting, because there were some critics who were talking about how this movie was typically Miike. It was egregiously gory and whatever. It wasn't.
Now, to be fair, we've also come off of a number of transgressive films, and we've seen enough things where maybe our standards are a little different. I don't know. It's not like we watch a bunch of rom-coms on this show.
Now, I haven't seen 13 Assassins. It's generally considered stronger than this film. You haven't seen it either, correct?
No.
Yeah, but as someone who's not incredibly well-versed in the oeuvre of Miike, and just taking this film at face value as what it is, I really liked it.
I've certainly liked everything that Miike has done that I've seen.
It, having not read the manga either, a lot of times when you get manga adaptations, some mangas can be pretty crazy. You mentioned Ninja Scroll. And also, mangas are these extended storylines that go on forever. Blade of the Immortal ran for I think almost 20 years in manga format. There's something like 12 or 19 or 20 volumes of it. The fact that this adapted 2 of those volumes, it had a lot of story to tell, and it could have been done a lot worse. It could have felt like they were just trying to put stuff in there just for the sake of being faithful to the story that it was based on.
It certainly could have just been a whole lot of in-references for people who've read it, but I was able to enjoy it without having any prior knowledge.
And I think there's a lot of stuff in there where you just know it was in the manga. Because it's just, you're like, this had to have been from the source material. But yeah, it doesn't interfere with the enjoyment of it. And I think that's a real strength of this movie, is that it is an adaptation, and you really require no knowledge, no insider knowledge. You just have to basically be okay with watching a samurai movie. If you don't like period Japanese films, this is probably not the thing for you. If you don't like samurais, probably not the movie for you.
だったら
誰に頼まれた？
浅野の娘か。
誰だっていいだろう。どうせお前も死ぬんだからよ。
ふざけてんじゃねえぞ。心得の1、相手の軌道を封じたら8割の勝利。この辺りは俺が生まれ育った場所でね。ガキの頃ダチの一人がぬかるみにはまって死んでるのを俺が発見した。ちょうどあんたが立ってるあたりだ。心得の2、地の利をもって天を発し。
I mean, Miike is a pretty strong filmmaker. I'm not surprised that he made something really cool out of this. But I do recognize, so much of our pop culture nowadays requires you to have a certain degree of nerd street cred just to understand all the meta references and sort of get the kind of full experience out of it, which is kind of not how you should do it,
Anytime I hear negatives about anything that's adapted from anything else, I start wondering how much of that is just people being upset that it's not exactly what they were hoping it was. And it becomes really hard to trust any sort of review from anybody who's seen it in any alternate form sometimes.
Or they'll complain about it where Watchmen was exactly what they were expecting. It was too close. There's a fine line. This actually did give me some interest in possibly hunting down the manga.
And there's an anime as well.
There is an anime. I forgot about that.
It does make me want to see Ichi the Killer again, because that's another film where it's not about what I thought it would be about. It wasn't really about Ichi. It was about the underboss of the victim of one of Ichi's murders. I forget his name, but that character is fantastic. I love that guy.
Yeah, I'm definitely also kind of curious to look back at... This is Miike's 100th directorial effort. He himself has said some of the things may or may not be considered, films. I'm doing air quotes here. Just because of how they were released and...
But hey, you know what? You do 100 films, short films, whatever. That's still a lot. He's prolific. He's a Stephen King kind of figure when it comes to films.
And I definitely feel like, I'm curious about 13 Assassins now. I've never seen Ichi the Killer, even though I've heard so much about it. Kind of curious to revisit that. I own Audition, which was his Masters of Horror episode, and kind of curious to look back at that again. It's a director I've known a lot about for a long time and just have never really gotten, my hands dirty with it.
And so it'd be interesting to hear what those of you who might have dirty hands have to say about Miike.
Yeah, you can let us know on our social media, on Twitter, on Facebook. We are at FYC Show, or just search For Your Consideration. You can also post on our YouTube comments wall, which is where most people choose to communicate with us. You can also find us on Instagram. You can find us on WordPress, as I stated earlier, fycshow.wordpress.com. Not the address I've been telling you guys for months.
And if you want to throw us a bone, there's always going over to audibletrial.com/FYC show. I doubt they'd have a Blade of the Immortal in an audiobook format. But they might have something that is more your interest. Get a free trial, free book, leave afterwards if you want, not pay a dime. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
30 days to enjoy whatever you've selected, and forever and after, even if you choose not to continue. And just another way you guys can support us, we have the Patreon campaign going, patreon.com/FYC show. If you want to throw us a buck or two, we've got some reward levels there we think you might be interested in, and helps keeps the lights on, helps keeps us able to continue to evolve and grow the show and create some interesting content for you guys.
Mostly it's a whole hell of a lot of encouragement and a big ol' attaboy.
And just one last reminder that we are extending the contest, the FYC 100 contest. Share your favorite episode, share any episode of the show, the last 100 some episodes on Twitter, hashtag FYC 100. We'll choose a winner and we will announce it on next Monday's episode, which will be Dustin's pick, and that is...
Plan 9 from Outer Space. Let us go. It's been a while since we've done a movie that's notoriously bad. We've got Troll 2 under our belts. Let's get some Plan 9 going on.
I've never seen it. I'm looking forward to checking it out. So, little Ed Wood, make things fun. And for Thursday's episode, the second installment of our week of ATC every month. We're going to be talking about 2 films that Dustin and I have recommended to each other. Dustin recommended
The Lovely Bones, and Mike recommended
All-Star Superman. And with that, we bid you guys adieu in this first of 2 ATC episodes this week. Thanks so much for joining us. I've been your host, Mike.
And I've been Dustin. Take care until next time.
Sayonara. Ciao. How do you say goodbye in Japanese?
I only took 2 years of Japanese. I should fucking know this. Of course, because you asked me.
Japanese hello is ni hao, right?
Yeah, no. That's Chinese.
That's Chinese.
Ohayo gozaimasu. Ohayo.
Sayonara. Holy
Oh my
shit.
god. We are bad. Kill me now.
Right?
That's like the only word anybody ever knows.
And banzai!
Yep, we know what our stinger's gonna be now. Oh my god. That is bad.